Hi everyone. For those who haven't met me, my name is Sara Long. I'm a researcher in child health and wellbeing at the Decipher Research Centre at Cardiff University. And Decipher houses the School Health Research Network and is a public health research centre that specialises in the development and evaluation of public health improvement interventions. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight in and let you all know what the coverage of this presentation is. So I'm currently undergoing and have completed some work around the curriculum for Wales and the reforms in general, more generally. And today I'm going to be talking to you about school staff perceptions of their school's preparedness for rollout of national school reforms. So I'm going to contextualise why we carried this study out by giving a brief overview of policy, practice and the research context. Specifically, I'm going to look at I'm going to mention my own research. I'm going to follow that by giving you an overview of the study and the methods that we used. I'm going to discuss the findings and the implications and also briefly outline next steps. So just to give a bit of background then to the research. So as I'm sure most, if not all of you will be aware, I would be very surprised if there are educationalists listening to this talk who are not aware of the fact that the education system in Wales is undergoing major tripartite reform. So what this means is that there have been systemic changes to professional learning, so training and development for teachers and school practitioners, changes to assessment and evaluation, and of course changes to the curriculum. So these changes represent a very radical departure from decisions made at Westminster that affect the whole of the UK, and a departure from the current, soon-to-be previous national curriculum, which was written in 1988. And of course, this national curriculum that has been serving us for several decades now is dated and unsuitable. And what I mean by that is, obviously we've seen, we have issues now that didn't affect our young people and learners then. So for example, social media, technology and how that's evolved, and all of these issues that our young people are facing that the national curriculum wasn't designed to cater for. And obviously schools have responded to emerging issues, but the reason these reforms are happening is because the system needed a major overhaul. So the aims of these reforms are to raise school standards, reduce the attainment gap, and ensure that education is a source of national pride and public confidence. The reforms give health and well-being an unprecedented level of importance. Health not only features as one of the 4 overarching purposes of the reforms, so to create healthy, confident individuals, but it also features as one of 6 areas of learning and experience. So, under the current system, there are lots of subjects which are often siloed, and health and well-being sort of, I guess, has been viewed as the poor relative in the context of other subjects such as mathematics and science. So yeah, so essentially the reforms are giving health and well-being an unprecedented level of importance. And all of this is important. And that this work that I'm going to talk to you about today is important because understanding schools and practitioners within schools and learners within schools, understanding their starting points, can inform which schools and groups are more likely to need support and what type of support they're likely to need, and also tailoring of that support as well. In terms of the research context, there are a wide range of studies that are ongoing at the moment. So the OECD has done some work, and Welsh Government have commissioned other pieces of work as well as carrying out their own sort of evaluations, if you like, or research studies. But in the context of my research, I was commissioned by Welsh Government to carry out a series of studies. So the first of these studies it's sort of aimed to understand the aims and processes of the reforms with a focus on health and well-being. So I've completed this work. I carried out interviews with senior stakeholders in the Welsh education system, with a remit for health and well-being, and also who were involved in, for example, professional learning or writing the curriculum. I've submitted the academic report to the British Education Research Journal. It hasn't been published yet, but if you're interested in the findings of that work, this time last year, I presented 2 webinars outlining the key findings. So you can find those webinars, you can access those webinars on the School Health Research Network website. The second part of this work, which will actually be commencing in a couple of weeks, will be to, sorry, I've misspelt carry there, to carry out case studies to explore school staff perceptions of and school preparations for rollout of the new curriculum in September. So I'll be going to schools, I'll be interviewing school staff, having a little look at their environment and looking at what they're doing ahead of national rollout. And then the final part of this study, it will involve developing a framework for an outcomes evaluation of the impacts of school reforms on health and well-being. And as most of you will be aware, I'm mindful that there may be people accessing this presentation who are not educationalists or who are new to the area. But the third and final part of this work, where we'll sort of be looking at health and well-being trajectories of young people, will involve analysis of the School Health Research Network student health and well-being data. Okay, so just circling back to the current study that I'm going to be talking about and presenting the findings of shortly. The aim of this study was to explore schools' perceived level of preparedness to deliver the curriculum for Wales from the perspectives of school staff. And we went a step further and broke this down by free school meal status and school language medium, so Welsh, English and bilingual. I just want to note before I move on to the findings that what we've done here is take a retrospective snapshot of level of preparedness prior to COVID-19 and prior to national rollout of the reforms. And I'll say a little bit more about that later, but I think it's just important to contextualize that a lot has happened since we captured this data. So in terms of methods, we analysed survey responses that were provided by school staff when completing the school environment questionnaire. I'm just going to say a little bit more about the school environment questionnaire, or the SEQ. So what is it? It's a survey that collects data on school level policies and practices that aim to improve health and educational outcomes. It's administered to School Health Research Network secondary schools in Wales. So we have we have all secondary schools in Wales in this network. I believe that's be correct, but Joan will correct me at the end if not. But it's, yeah, the SEQ is administered to certain schools alongside the student health and wellbeing survey every 2 years. And the school health data, both the student survey and the SEQ, provide a data infrastructure for Wales for us to explore learners' trajectories in health and wellbeing, to evaluate interventions such as the curriculum for Wales and their impacts on student health and wellbeing, and also provide a method for us to explore what's going on in schools around health and wellbeing as well, and to ensure that the surveys remain policy and practice relevant. Key stakeholders are regularly consulted on the survey content and structure. So, for example, on Welsh Government colleagues, Public Health Wales colleagues, and so on. For this analysis, we classified schools as either low, medium, or high free school meal status. And we also classified schools as low versus high level of preparedness for the reforms. In terms of the number of schools involved, 167 out of 213 sites from all 22 local authorities across Wales completed the survey. So that's 78, just over 3/4, 78% of sites. This included 19 Welsh language schools, 118 English language schools, and 25 bilingual schools. In terms of the questions, we asked schools to determine level of preparedness. So the questions asked about the extent to which staff felt prepared to deliver each of the 6 areas of learning experience, so that we could compare basically across the different AOLEs, and so that we could also benchmark by free school meal status and language medium. We also asked about the types of activities being undertaken in preparation to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE specifically. We didn't ask about the other the activities being undertaken to deliver the other AOLEs, of course. We asked about the extent of involvement of staff and other stakeholder groups, and we asked about the potential challenges in delivering reforms within their particular schools. So yeah, and I should have mentioned earlier actually that the SEQ is completed by a member of the senior leadership team, who usually has a remit for health and well-being. Okay, so key findings related to staff preparedness to deliver the AOLEs. So this figure here shows the proportion of schools reporting high preparedness to deliver the 6 AOLEs by school FSM entitlement. A key point, I suppose, is that, sorry, I'm assuming you can all see the colours. So the first, so there's 3 sort of bars, if you like, for each AOLE. The first bar, the dark bar, represents low FSM schools. The second bar, which will either appear as grey or green, represents medium FSM schools, and the white bar represents high FSM schools. So just by eyeballing this, you can see that low FSM schools were generally more prepared to deliver each of the AOLEs. I'm not going to go into detail and draw out every comparison, but what we can see is that this was particularly true for mathematics and numeracy, science and technology, and importantly for health and well-being. Low FSM schools felt more prepared to deliver on the health and well-being agenda. Okay, so moving on to the proportion of schools reporting high preparedness to deliver the AOLEs by school language medium. Again, just by eyeballing this chart, we can see that Welsh medium schools, so that's the bar in the middle, felt more prepared to deliver each of the 6 areas of learning experience. This was followed by English speaking schools, with bilingual schools faring far worse. Again, this effect was particularly pronounced for LLC, maths and numeracy, and again for health and well-being. Okay, so moving on to staff and stakeholder. Sorry, these slides are jumping around a little bit. Okay, yeah, covered that. So moving on to staff and stakeholder involvement when preparing to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE. Over 3/4 of schools, or almost 4 in 5 schools, reported that their senior leadership team were highly involved in the process and the preparations. A high level of involvement was also reported for other teaching staff, with over 2/3 of other teaching staff reported as being involved in preparations, and also pastoral and support staff. Comparatively, involvement of students was relatively low, at around 25%, and involvement of families in the wider community was particularly low. So this figure here shows the proportion of schools reporting a high level of involvement in preparations to deliver the health and wellbeing area of learning experience by school FSM entitlement. And just again, by eyeballing the graph, what we can see is that low FSM schools had a slight edge in terms of high levels of involvement of the different groups. What I think jumps out here, what's interesting, is that we can see that for high FSM schools were more likely to involve students in their preparations to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE. So we can see that around 35% of high FSM schools involved students, compared to 30% of low FSM schools and 16% of medium FSM schools. Conversely, low FSM schools were more likely to involve the wider community, and there's a 10% difference there, so that's quite substantial. And yeah, we're more likely to involve SLT and pastoral and support staff. So looking at Welsh language medium then, what we can see is that actually bilingual schools were more likely to report high level of involvement in preparations to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE. This is true pretty much across the board, but with the exception of students and families. So in terms of activities undertaken while preparing to deliver the health and wellbeing area of learning experience, around 3/4 of schools were planning cross-curricular teaching, and 1 in 2, or around half, were trialling this approach. Around 70% were training staff. Around 2/5 were consulting students, 2/5 were adopting new health and wellbeing interventions, and around 10% were doing nothing or waiting for guidance, which at the time isn't, it seems sort of counterintuitive that schools wouldn't be working towards this agenda, but actually we captured the data between January and March 2020. So, doing nothing was actually a perfectly reasonable response in light of the fact that the situation and the guidance documents and so on were constantly evolving. Around just over 10% reported undertaking other activities. So, for example, holding cluster inset days, focusing on health and wellbeing, reviewing or carrying out whole school evaluation of existing health and wellbeing processes and systems, partnership working with other schools, Welsh Government and the consortia. So we're breaking this down. So we broke this down by FSM. So this graph here presents the type of activities undertaken by schools in preparation to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE by free school meal entitlement. So once again, just by eyeballing the data, we can see that the general picture is that low FSM schools were more likely to be carrying out a series of activities and working towards this agenda. And when we broke this down by school language medium, again, the picture is generally that Welsh medium schools are sort of further along in their journeys, with bilingual schools being the least prepared in terms of activities undertaken. I'm just giving a very brief overview of these graphs, but all of these graphs can be found in the report that's available on the Shern website. So we asked schools about challenges in delivering the reforms, and this was an open text box response. 99 schools responded to this question, these questions, and actually there was a really broad and varied responses, as you can imagine, with almost 100 schools responding. But we sort of whittled this down, and delivery challenges commonly identified were around planning and implementation, assessment, and staff capacity and buy-in. So just to give you an example of delivery challenges around planning and implementation, one was ensuring adequate time for curriculum development, which I know to be a problem because this is something that came up in a research study that I mentioned earlier, my first piece of work essentially that I carried out. So yeah, ensuring adequate time for curriculum and development is going to be a key challenge. Also addressing the practicalities of implementation, so staffing and timetabling. This is particularly problematic for secondary schools, which are busier environments and where students are moving around between staff and between different lessons. In terms of assessment, some delivery challenges, some common delivery challenges reported were navigating transitions between pupil progression steps. So while we have the progression steps in place, you know, some of the details of the assessment and evaluation framework are yet to be fleshed out. So this is sort of quite unnerving, if you like, for those involved in this area. And there's kind of this need to balance a flexible curriculum with a more rigid assessment structure, perhaps. Staff capacity and buy-in, so ensuring staff's professional development needs are met, and addressing staff anxiety and inertia around curriculum reform. I mean, one thing that came out of the study that I mentioned earlier was that health and well-being in particular is perceived as being particularly challenging. And this is because it's a relatively new area for a lot of staff. And it doesn't have the same history of being taught and assessed as some of the other subject areas. So if you would like to see some quotes from staff, we've included some in the report, which I just mentioned you can access on the website. So what are the implications of this research then? Well, there are many, but I've just picked out a few of the key ones really. So just to reiterate, exploring differences in schools' preparations for delivering the curriculum for Wales by free school meal status and language medium can inform what type of support is required and for what type of schools, and can also help ensure that support is tailored depending on schools' needs. As I've just mentioned, health and wellbeing are relatively new additions, and arguably this makes them the most challenging areas for schools to prepare to deliver. And this might explain why we've seen sort of the general picture, why we've seen schools reporting feeling less prepared to deliver the health and wellbeing area of learning experience. So as we've seen, and I sort of glazed over some of the findings, and you can really delve into those if you look at the report. But what came through, and what I hope I've communicated to you, is that high free school meal status schools were least likely, in fact, to report feeling prepared for the reforms. This may reflect the fact that high free school meal status schools were less likely to be involved in the pioneer process, so they've been sort of one step removed from it for the whole journey. And it might also reflect that additional challenges that high free school meal status schools may encounter additional challenges that might actually act to reduce their capacity to engage in preparations around curriculum reform. So in conclusion, high free school meal status schools are likely to require more and different types of support, for example, from the consortium. And I just wanted to highlight that, you know, it's been a bit tricky finding how to present this information, because we, you know, definitely don't want to paint the picture that as schools a certain group of schools are doing particularly badly. This is not the purpose of this piece of work. So it's not meant to be used as an evaluative or comparative tool. It's meant to be used as a basis for demonstrating where additional support may be required, and can be used to inform, for example, how we ask for support, or the reason schools might ask for support. So I've mentioned a few times that the data for this study were collected pre-COVID, and in terms of the reform timeline, quite a while ago, a couple of years ago. So it's likely that the landscape has changed since then, and that the schools that may have reported feeling less prepared are actually far further along in their journey. But actually, while also being mindful of the fact that COVID may have delayed some of this work for schools. So yeah, so essentially it provides a useful baseline, a pre-COVID baseline to inform future work about the impacts of COVID on schools' implementation of curriculum for Wales, but also provides a benchmark to see how far schools have come, I suppose, and the level of change from 2 years ago. And I alluded earlier to the fact that this quite small study actually is taking place in the context of a series of studies that I've been funded to carry out by Welsh Government. And as I alluded to, I'll be carrying out case studies in schools over the next couple of months to explore how, in a bit more detail really, how they're preparing for implementation of the changes in September 2022. So I think I've covered everything. Undoubtedly there'll be bits that I've missed, but I'm very happy to take questions at the end, and also to receive emails if you're interested in any of the work that I'm doing. I do plan on carrying out another webinar once I've got the results and some findings from my work in case study schools. So keep your eyes peeled, and yeah, hopefully I'll have something to present to you by summer. Thank you very much.